Hello and welcome to Amrita by the Book. My name is Amrita and this is my booktube where today I am delighted to be ranking my favorite Hercule Poirots. I say my favorite, but actually these are all the Hercule Poirot adaptations that I've seen. I know there are a couple that are not on this list. The most significant one that I have left off this list is the Japanese anime version, which I want to watch and I will watch at some point, but I haven't gotten around to it as yet. I love Hercule Poirot. I've loved it. I say love, but really I started reading the mysteries when I was about 12. And in addition to being a mood reader, I'm also 100% a binge reader. So I spent one entire summer, I think I was about 12, I couldn't have been more than 13, and I just went through them, and I was so young that I didn't actually understand the concept of a series. Like, I knew that it was chronological, but I didn't quite grasp the idea that he was also aging as the books went on. So I would just go to the library and pick up whatever was there and whatever sounded good to me. So I read the books all higgledy-piggledy the first time, and to be honest, like, I didn't really see that it made a difference to me and my enjoyment of the mysteries. I mean, the character of Hercule Poirot did change as the books moved back and forth, but I was 12. What did I understand about aging and about people's interior lives? I was just there for all the murder. And it's funny because I have definitely read better books and better characters than some of the Agatha Christie Hercule Poirot mysteries, because they were very much of a time, and they can be racist and misogynistic, and I mean, it's a very particular vibe, and I know a number of people who have begun reading the mysteries over the past few years, have made videos about it and have spoken about like how terrible they found some of the things. I was 12 and it was still very formative in my brain, so I kind of took it as I found it, especially because I was used to reading a lot of 19th century literature at that point, and so I just thought, like, everybody was racist. Definitely took me a while to realize that that was a problem. But over the years, Poirot has been a comfort watch more than a comfort read. I will be in this position where I will start watching an adaptation, and sometimes I will remember every single detail, but sometimes I might have watched that exact same adaptation the year before, but it won't be until the third act or something that I'll remember the specifics and who done it. And it's not because these stories are disposable. I don't think of these stories as being disposable at all. I think there's just something about them taken as a whole, especially when you binge them, that just makes it impossible for you to keep a very strict count of all the characters and their motivations, because Christie really delighted in having a cast of hundreds. Slight exaggeration, but you know what I mean if you've ever watched or read a Christie book. But I do have more things to say about the comfort nature of these things, and I would rather say it in context of the adaptation. So let's get into it. In very last place, we have John Malkovich, who is a weird choice for the Hercule Poirot character, and I don't really know what was with that, except this is from the same group of people that have been doing these very reimagined modern retellings of the Christie mysteries. And by reimagined modern retellings, I don't mean that they are bringing it forward into the present time. I mean that they are a little bit more free with the material. You know, they interpret it in different ways. They change characters, they smush characters together, and sometimes it's really great. I have a video up where I'm talking about the 4 modern adaptations that I really liked, and those are non-Marple, non-Poirot adaptations, and I think they really work. But in this particular case, because Malkovich is playing a character and that character is so familiar to me that it really does a number on me. Your experience of this might be different because you might not have grown up with that character. You might not associate that character with certain, you know, pleasure zones in your brain. He might not be a comfort watch for you. So you might react differently, and there are certain things that I do appreciate about these adaptations. For example, there's this entire thing about, you know, Poirot being an immigrant in a country that is increasingly hostile towards immigrants in the lead up to the Second World War. This is largely subtext, and in certain adaptations it becomes a bit more prominent, but I think of all the adaptations that I have seen, this is the version that really does a good job of addressing it head on. But there are other things, you know, like they changed the backstory of Poirot, and I really don't know what that is about. And honestly, like, it seems to be a way for Malkovich to be actorly, and I enjoy John Malkovich, it's not that, but I just don't like him enough to throw the character of Poirot and his established backstory down the drain. It's a fairly divisive adaptation in my opinion, but it is interesting, and I would recommend that people try it out if they've never heard of it before. Next up is Peter Ustinov, and I know there are a bunch of people who love his interpretation, and he comes only second to David Suchet, I think, in terms of the number of adaptations that he has appeared in. But the thing for me is that he just plays it too broad. There's an element of camp about this character that is very enjoyable, and all the best adaptations really tap into that part of Poirot, but Ustinov just goes like full tilt towards it, and he does it in a way that turns him into somewhat of a sad buffoon. You know, he's kind of like your grandpa who is kind of embarrassing but still lovable, which is a vibe that I can see a lot of people reacting well to, but it's not really for me. But that said, there are certain versions of the books that he has appeared in that are, you know, just taken as a whole, as a, you know, like a TV movie or whatever, they are really good and enjoyable. And my personal favorite is his version of Evil Under the Sun, which I think is probably the best version of that particular story. And if you are interested in checking out his version, then I do suggest you start with that one, even though I don't think that was the first one that he did. But again, like I said, it never really matters if you're reading the Poirot books or watching the adaptations in order. Next is a surprise entry, and it's Alfred Molina, and I honestly did not watch this when it came out. I think it came out like early 2000s, and it's a, you know, it's a real wild swing in that it is a proper modernization. Like, they take Poirot and make him into a modern day character, and it is kind of wild because, you know, like, I'm not used to Poirot having a sex life, for instance, and I mean, I like Molina a lot as a character, and I'm not really sure if I am reacting to Molina as the actor or if I'm reacting to his presentation or his portrayal of Poirot. And I think it's actually the former, that I just like Molina, and therefore I'm just like, well, all right, because there's nothing that visibly Poirot-like about the character that he is portraying, you know. Bringing it into the modern times just leaves him as just another detective. And I mean, Molina has a lot of fun with the character, especially when he's talking about like how he's so famous, you know, and like everybody thinks he's amazing. But honestly, like the way that he talks about it, about his fame in America, it's not something that translates from the 1930s to the early 2000s, because it just sounds super weird in that context. So I think it's a swing and a miss, but Molina is at least enjoyable on screen, and therefore I'm just going to, you know, as a character, I'm just going to put his version above Ustinov and Malkovich. Because Malkovich is just an outright miserable bastard in his adaptation. Let's be very clear. The next entrant on this list is Albert Finney, and you know, you can't discuss Albert Finney without somebody always pointing out that he won the Oscar. He is the only actor to have played Poirot to have won the Oscar for the role, you know, not as like a side project. And I get it, like it's a great performance, but it is also one of my least favorite performances, because he just interprets Hercule Poirot as an ass. And there are definitely parts of Poirot's character, especially towards, you know, the latter half of the books, I think, where Christie just got sick and tired of Poirot herself, and therefore she just really played up the fact that he was just this ass to a lot of people. And Finney just like leans into that particular interpretation of the character. But the thing is, like, I don't really want to see that all the time. But that said, this is just like one film. It's Murder on the Orient Express, which is a great story. And it's a great film, you know. It was made by Sidney Lumet. It has a cast that is just fabulous, you know. It's Lauren Bacall, Ingrid Bergman, who also won an Oscar for this movie. It's, I think, Sean Connery, like all kinds of like really great actors. And it's an enjoyable film. I do have friends who prefer the Suchet version, or, you know, don't really care for this interpretation, but I think it's a great film. I have a good time watching it, and it's one of those films that, you know, I don't go out of my way to watch, but if it's playing somewhere, I will sit down and watch it from start to finish. Right, top 3, and I have said before that every time I make these lists, I always end up surprising myself, and here we are with another surprise. Number 3 on my list is Sir Kenneth Branagh. I honestly thought that he would come way down the list because, you know, talking about actors who lean into one part or the other of the Poirot character, Branagh really taps into the camp side, and he is so over the top, you know, right from the mustache. That mustache really sets the tone. But what I really like and enjoy about his interpretation is that he does it very old school Hollywood, you know. I was just talking about Albert Finney and his version of Murder on the Orient Express, and that's really what Branagh is harkening back to, except with a better budget, I suppose. And I'll say this for Branagh, that he really commits, you know, like he just really plays into the twinkle in the eye, and, you know, the pathos and the accent, and the accent is so weird, and I find it really enjoyable, but I have to imagine that it must be some sort of hate crime against Belgians. I can only imagine that there are tons of Belgians sitting at home and going like, we don't sound like that, like what is that? I have a Belgian friend who's like very close to me, and I always send him the trailers of like all the Branagh versions, and I'm like, do you sound like that? But I feel Branagh really understands something really fundamental to the Poirot mysteries, which is that it's not supposed to be too deep, and it's not supposed to be too violent. Like you can try and reinvent the wheel with these stories, but really they are meant for a very specific audience, such as myself. And we are not really looking to be, you know, put off our dinner by watching these things, or, you know, go to bed sobbing at the death of some, you know, poor person who didn't deserve to die. The people who die in these things usually deserve to die, and part of the whole experience is the exotic nature of the settings and the drama of all the side characters. And I think Branagh really gets that. Like, he has that sensibility, you know, that old school Hollywood sensibility, which makes sense because he's, you know, he's a Shakespearean actor and director of legend, basically. So yeah, I think he does a good job of it, and I enjoy it. I have come down to that firm opinion after waffling about it for a couple of years. Number 2 is again a big surprise to me. This is a version that I did not watch until fairly recently, and it is the version with Ian Holm. And I think it was a made-for-TV movie or something, and it's weird because it's not actually based on a book written by Christie, and it's not a murder mystery as such. Like, it is basically Hercule Poirot, the character, stepping out into the real world and meeting Christie, and then they have this weird, like, sort of psychological back and forth, and it's really about Christie and about her feelings towards her character, and then, you know, Hercule Poirot as the character meeting his creator, and then the two of them having a sort of heart-to-heart, but also playing a cat and mouse game. And he plays it so perfectly. Like, I really, really like Ian Holm. I wish he'd been able to play more, you know, versions of that character. I wish he'd been able to adapt, you know, a proper Poirot mystery to film, because I think he would have done a really great job just from watching this. I don't know where you can watch this. I think you can find clips on YouTube, but they are, you know, if you're interested in something a bit more deep, a little bit more psychological, something a little bit more avant-garde, then I would really suggest that you watch this. But the performance was really great. Like, if there are those amongst you who really enjoy, you know, performances, and that's what you really look for in film or TV, then this is a version that you should really check out, because I think Holm does a number of interesting things with this character. And so we come to the number 1 Poirot of all, and you know and I know that there can only be one, and that's David Suchet. From the way that he looks, from the mustache, to the way that he walks, the way that he dresses, the way that he talks to his friends, the relationships that he has, that amazing apartment that he lives in, the people that he encounters, and the way that he talks to them and relates to them. Everything about this character is just perfect. The earlier seasons of Suchet's Poirot are probably some of my most rewatched pieces of television, because anytime that I'm feeling down, anytime I just want to switch off my brain and just sink into the comfort of watching something that I already know is not going to surprise me in any way, but is also going to, you know, give me that pleasurable tinge of like, who done it? I mean, those particular episodes are some of my most viewed and all-time favorite pieces of television. If you've never watched it, I highly, highly recommend it. During the last few seasons of his particular version, and it went on for like 20 years, you know, because British TV, so you have like, you know, like 3 episodes every other year or something. So it went on for a long time, and in the latter half, I think something happened to Suchet in his personal life. A friend of mine told me that he just became more Catholic and therefore had that reflected in the character, which, you know, like Poirot, although he was Belgian and probably he was Catholic, I don't think the books really made a great statement about his faith informing his principles and the way that he did his detective work. But I think Suchet definitely allowed the religiosity of that character to come through a bit more than Christie intended, probably. And that does make some of the later mysteries more somber and a little bit sadder, I feel, you know, because Poirot is just at a point in his life, the way that Suchet plays it, where he is just incredibly disappointed in humanity, it seems. And that's really sad, and I didn't really enjoy that, especially the last book, you know, the last adaptation. Obviously, you know, that's the one in which Poirot dies, so it's not going to be fun and giggles, but it was really hard to watch. I've seen it once, I've never watched it again. I don't think I ever will. But the early episodes of that show, the fun episodes as I like to call them, you know, like I love them, I adore them. There's just such good mysteries. I recommend those to everybody. So that's my list of Hercule Poirots, and as always, this is a highly subjective list. It has to do with my mood, with my feelings, and you know, yours might differ. So let me know, who are your favorites? Are these your favorites as well? Do you have quibbles with number 1 on my list, which, shock, horror, how could you possibly love anyone else other than Suchet? Tell me all about it. Also, do you have a favorite Poirot mystery? Do you prefer Marple? I mean, there are so many things that I want to know. Tell me all. For more videos, please hit the subscribe button.